right, my friends, welcome to another episode. Here we are with the legendary and monumentally important person in the lives of Chelsea and Tyler Hill, Julie Briggs. Welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So, before we talk about all your uh, great adventures and your story and all your wisdom, we obviously are more than what we do. We're more than what we teach. I'd love to start by asking you if you had, say, a couple $100, a weekend to your disposal, the world is your oyster. What does Julie Briggs do for a weekend all to herself? Who she's bringing with her? What is she doing? What she's spending her money on? What makes Julie come alive, independent of work, independent of all the things she does to change the world?
Okay, we're hitting the ground running, huh? So I guess I can have the initial answer of, man, I'm taking my husband and we're going up to the mountains. Maybe we'll go hit a beach if I can figure out how to do that for a couple $100. Uh, just some sort of adventure. Being out in nature. I'm an interesting nature person. I'm a nature person as in I love to be in nature. Like take me to the mountains, take me to the beach, go walk around a cool old town. But I want to sleep in a bed.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not a huge like, let's go sleep on a rock, and poop in the woods. I'd rather
Yes.
not. But being in nature, taking my shoes off, absolutely. Then there's also the introverted answer of I could go somewhere by myself.
Yes.
Or I could just sit around all my plants and my books. I read something recently that said once you're middle-aged, which I guess I am, they're like, what kind of household have you become? Is it pickleball, plants, sourdough, or running? And I'm like, wow.
Mm,
I've
dang.
got the plants and the sourdough on lock. So,
And your husband has started running a little
and my husband
bit.
loves to go running in a running is dumb shirt.
Yes, he does.
I have not yet picked up pickleball though. So, but I think, yeah, definitely getting out into nature and, always some chill time with good friends
Yeah.
is
I love it.
preferred.
Yeah, we are a running and plants family, so
Mhm.
that checks out.
Yep.
It's also I love that you said alone time. Most people that know me, if you know me really well, you would suspect this, but like I love alone time, and I'll do 2 or 3 solo trips a year, even if I go like I'll usually go visit my brother in Minnesota, but I'll go early while he's still at work, so I can just go have a day in Minneapolis by
Yes.
myself.
Yes.
And it's one of the best things ever. So I totally get that.
I can
Um,
very much do that. I've had people ask me like, how long could you spend alone? And I was like, oh, I mean, a few days.
yeah,
Yeah, that'd be fine.
I love that. Where's home for you? What would you consider home to be?
Yeah, definitely here in Colorado Springs. I mean, I have been here since I was 14, so even though not born here, it definitely is my community and my home.
Yeah, yeah. How has it become home for you? So this isn't where you've grown up. That's a pretty quick answer for
Hmm.
folks who might, not be inhabiting a place where they were born. And obviously I'm leading the cart before the horse, knowing you, but how has this city become home for you in that nature?
Yeah, I think I love traveling and I love going other places, experiencing other things, but I always tend to feel this sense of like, home when I drive back into the Colorado
Yeah,
state lines.
yeah.
I think I get Colorado and she gets me,
Mhm.
I can live with the weather. I can live with the different, you can be big city, you can be out in the mountains. I mean, living in a place where I get an entire view of the Front Range every single day, while also living in a city that has everything to offer me
Yes.
here. I can't do humidity. I can't do tons and tons of swampy bugs. So, and also I think just the history here of like watching Colorado Springs morph since the mid 90s and
Totally.
what it is now compared to what it was. I think when I was in high school, people were like, Colorado Springs is lame. There's no culture here. There's nothing going on. And then I've just watched over the last, 25 years plus that the city has really come alive. I mean, we have entrepreneurs and we have artists and we have
Yeah.
activists and we have all sorts of stuff happening here that, no place is perfect, but this place is home. So.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, you've been in this city for a long time, and you and your husband have contributed not only to just my life, but the life of this community in a pretty profound way. Um, I'd be curious if you could maybe just let us in a little bit of like a little bit of how you and Alan, as is who your husband is, what's some of that like original parts of your story? How did you guys meet? How did you guys start kind of working in and among the community? And I'm so interested in it just like you guys take so many risks. You guys go on so many adventures. You live a life that I think a lot of people wish they could live. Um, and yet you guys are very normal people at the same time. I'd be curious, like just as you guys even like started your journey together, were you as adventurous and courageous? Were you taking the risks? Where did this like great life of yours contributing to this city really start? I know it's kind of a vague question, but I'd be curious. Just let us into like the beginnings of your origins, you and Alan, and how it's evolved.
Yeah, I mean, we met here in Colorado Springs at the time we were both attending the same church, and so
Hmm.
I think we were both always very drawn to people, and so that connected us to each other, and usually in different ways. We used to talk about in the early years that we were together how um, we were both drawn to people and helping and serving people. He was drawn to the front of the room, and I was drawn to the back of the room.
Yep.
And that's always kind of been our story. He's been more like up front, leader, pastor, business owner, coach, all of that kind of stuff, and amazing and the things that he does. And I've always been drawn to, the back of the room, the forgotten, the not noticed or seen. And between the two of us, we could really navigate a space.
Yes.
So I think there was a lot of like in our early years when we were just like swimming in young children and not as easily able to just willy-nilly live our lives however we wanted. We did some opening of our home. It may not be clean, and I'm not going to cook anything, but you can come do some spoken word poetry in our basement. We could do a
Yes.
house show on our driveway, have a band come and play, just serving free coffee to our neighbors at the crosswalk going over to the elementary school. We did that for years.
Hmm.
Just ways to connect with people inside of the chaos of like, I don't got much bandwidth,
Yes.
I have 4 kids. But showing up in whatever ways we can really brought us a lot of life, and we met a lot of really awesome, awesome people doing
Yeah.
that.
And so for a little bit of inside baseball really quick. I met Alan and Julie originally because when I used to perform poetry, I used to tour around the world actually performing poetry. But Alan had invited me into a house show that they were hosting, and I performed inside their basement a couple times. But there's a really famous story among our family of Chelsea going into Alan and Julie's house, kind of seeing some of the pictures on their wall as we were going into a stranger's house to perform in their basement. And Chelsea, I can't remember if she walked up to you or Alan, but was like, I want to know you guys, or I want to be like you guys. And she had said that. And there was this draw to your family from ours because of just the unique nature by which you live life. And that's of course why have you and will someday have Alan on the podcast. But I feel like I'm getting the gem because everybody does get interview Alan, and I know the gem at the heart of the operation. So that's why I'm excited to have you on the podcast first. But um yeah, so you guys have been a family that takes risks. In fact, there's a big sign in your house that says we do stuff. We
Mhm.
and you do so much stuff. And what's so inspiring about it is it's not just random stuff. It's not stuff without purpose. There's meaning behind it. I think I'd be curious before we get into the details of some of the inspiring parts of your story. How do you guys go about living the life you do when it comes to finding what has meaning for you? Like you guys do a lot of stuff, but it's not mindless. It's wildly purposeful. And we don't live the same lives. We're not supposed to live the same lives as your neighbor, but we all should live lives of purpose, I think. And you and Alan seem to be very good at mining out the meaning in your lives. How would you advise someone, or how have you learned to find the meaning as you go about your lived experience?
Yeah. Well, I think because we only have so many hours in the day, it's
Mhm.
really crucial that the things that we are choosing to do with our time are the things that we find meaning in.
Yeah.
And that can look like a lot of things. Like I find a lot of meaning in having in right now in my phase of life, I find a lot of meaning in having a slow Saturday morning.
Mhm.
So that means letting out a trade secret here. If anybody asks Alan or I to do anything before noon on a Saturday, we're going to let you know we're busy,
Mhm.
um, because because I'm not setting my alarm clock, and and we're just gonna use that time to rest. I might wake up early, I might not, who knows? But that is meaningful to me because for so long life has been so busy,
Yes.
and life can continue to be busy and all the different things. There's no shortage of meaningful things to be participating in, and I can't participate in all of them. And if I'm exhausted, I won't really be good at the
Yes.
things that I do show up for. So I think it's like what are finding the things like what is stirring me, what makes me excited, what makes me angry,
Mm.
what like pulls something out of me that just where I just know if I'm in tune with myself and listening, I need to be a part of this, or I want to be a part of this because it brings me joy or it brings me life or it brings me purpose.
Yes.
And balancing that with I'm not doing anything on Saturday mornings.
So how do you decide? Like you're an activist, you're very justice minded.
Hmm.
You care for the margins in every way. What and there's many different pools you dip your toes in that regard. But we all can't do it all. And in a time where we are aware of injustice now more than ever with the internet and the way it works,
Hmm.
how do you decide? I mean,
Yeah.
silence is compliance and or violence or
Right.
whatever. And
Right.
yeah, but you're silent on Saturday mornings.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can't do it all. We can't have an opinion about everything, but
Sure we can.
we can do something. Um,
Yeah.
how do you decide? How have you managed that being someone who has such deep passion in her soul?
Yeah, it's a good question because we have to have a framework. I think it's when we don't have a framework or a boundary of like, these are my things,
Mm,
that we exhaust ourselves, right?
yeah.
That's when we burn out. So I remember years ago, I attended a retreat that helped me craft like a mission statement, identity statement for myself. And I've used that
Mm,
as a way to navigate what kind of things I participate in and how I show up in spaces.
yes.
And the gist of my, statement at the end was that a big part of my life, I want it to be about promoting kindness, understanding, and healing in the world. So that filters through my brain when I'm answering the door to a solicitor that I really don't care to speak to.
Yes.
If I can pause and think, will this interaction promote kindness, understanding, and healing? I engage with that person on a very different level than if I just
Wow.
open the door and say, you're bothering me, get out of here, right? And it doesn't mean I have to buy what they're selling, but can I just engage for 30 seconds in some sort of way that promotes kindness? And so I use that filter often in my life. Does this promote kindness, understanding, and healing in the world? If it does, do I want to be a part of that? And if it doesn't, that's not for me.
Wow.
Um, and then I would say, secondly, like I just had, as family grows and grows and all the things, I just made an internal list for myself of like, these are the things that are going to get my best attention, and everything else, if I can do it, great. And if I can't, no. So it's like, for me, it's my family, my job,
Mm,
and my prison work.
mhm.
And everything else is a maybe, because
Yeah.
those are the three things that are going to get my best attention.
Yeah. Short of going to a great retreat, which, by the way, a little commercial, Chelsea and I will be releasing a retreat called the Sustainable Life Lab soon
Love it.
that actually does craft a personal ethic
So
statement
good.
and mission
Yeah.
statement. So stay tuned. Short of that, though, how does someone define that for themselves? Again, there's many things to participate in, and your
Yeah.
wisdom says create a framework. How do you choose? How do you pick?
Yeah. I think many people say this, you pay attention to what you pay attention to.
Yeah. So,
So it's a lot about like, what are the things that I feel drawn to? And can I narrow that? Um, and like I said before, it's like, what brings me life and joy? But also for me personally, I think about what makes me angry. Because what I've learned about myself is that if I am feeling angry, then it's likely because there's some sort of, you know, boundary that's been crossed or injustice that's being faced, or there's something behind that anger. So if I pay attention to and get curious about what is actually going on behind the anger, it might tell me something that I care a lot about. It usually does. My anger tells me what I care about.
wow. To befriend your anger has
Mm.
become a gift, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it doesn't mean I just get to explode it everywhere, but if I can just pay attention internally of like, ooh, this is bothering me, and get to the why behind it, it can be really powerful tool, not to use it as something to be curious about.
Yeah. So here we are, early on in your marriage to Alan, and you guys make a giant life decision. You'd been married for like 10 minutes, and everything changes. You have two kids overnight.
Hmm.
Tell us, would you be willing to tell us a little bit of that story and just some of the um, just extravagantly beautiful and ludicrous parts to what make that story what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are times in a relationship where one person is gonna spark an idea and the other person is going to say yay or nay, and then that switches, and then repeat for all of eternity. So before Alan and I were even engaged, I let him know that adoption was something that I was very interested in. In fact, that it was likely a deal breaker for me if he wasn't interested in it.
Mm.
So, so he was very on board. He was like, I never thought about that, but I don't have anything against it. So, okay, yeah, we could look into that. So we decided pretty early on, um, in our relationship that we wanted to adopt, and that we wanted to adopt first before trying to have any biological kids. I really, with what I knew and understood, which at the time I thought was a lot, but was very little, about just trauma and attachment and all of those things. I thought we'll have the most time and energy if we start this way than if we're already taking care of kids and then we try to adopt. And so we decided to adopt two kids from Ethiopia. They're biological siblings, Betty and Manny. They are now 21 and 17, but they came home to us when they were 6 and 2. And we had been married just shy of 3 years when we brought the kids home. And so that was very much, I mean, talk about an instant life change. And we zoomed ahead 10 years,
Yep.
in life, because then we were 28 years old and found ourselves with a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. Um, and then a year later, I had a baby. So we went from 0 kids to 3 kids in 13 months.
Yes.
I don't remember a lot, except that I didn't sleep for about 6 years.
Yes. And I mean, like again, it's so beautiful and so chaotic.
Mhm.
Like that's not like there's no rule book for that. Could
Yeah.
you help us understand like one of the things I'm so inspired to do is to like I want to help people take risks and I want them
Mhm.
to be their best, most expressive self, freely and fully themselves. And here you guys are. You'd been
Mhm.
married for 20 minutes and you
Mhm.
have three kids.
Yeah.
Like, but it's an expression of you. It's in alignment with who you always were. You always knew this was going to be yourself. For somebody who's like stuck, who doesn't have a dream,
Mhm.
who maybe wants to be like Julie Briggs, to live life to its fullest and make a difference. How does someone get to that point? Like, what would you say to a young version of you or a young girl that is looking for purpose, who wants to take a risk, to take the leap,
Mhm.
to live an exciting, fulfilling life like that? You guys did that early in marriage. You didn't read a book about it. You just did it. How does somebody tap into that?
Well, I think you have to weigh some things. So there's conventional wisdom, which is great, and thinking through things absolutely, and not making huge life decisions if it's not the right time or the relationship isn't where it needs to be. And also sometimes you just leap. I mean, when we decided to adopt, we were both working pretty low pay nonprofit, job ministry jobs. We were living in my parents' unfinished basement. We literally hung curtains up on the walls to cover the insulation. We were living in my parents' unfinished basement so that we could pay cash for grad school because I was working on my master's in counseling. And my dad was fighting cancer. So we're broke. We're living with my parents, in a basement with no walls. And I'm in grad school and my dad is sick. All of those things would scream, maybe this isn't the right time. And whether it was or whether it was not, what I knew is that I had a stirring in my spirit and I couldn't sleep. And it was all I thought about. And was it the right time or was it not the right time? I don't know. All I know is that we decided to leap and we decided to do it anyway. And somehow they approved us to do this anyway. And it was right because we got the kids that we got and can't imagine our family, without them or any other way. But then there's a tension there of would it also have been a good idea for most people to maybe not choose something so life-changing when all of that other stuff was going on?
Yeah,
Possibly so.
sure. Yeah.
I just knew that once it was kind of I got that fire in my belly, this was happening.
For the person that would say, I have a dream,
Mhm.
and I get this in my office most days to some degree.
Mhm.
I would do this, but I have a car payment and so I can't change my job yet. Or
Mhm.
I would love to adopt a kid, but I live in my parents' basement without walls. They
Mhm.
won't let me. Like there's always a reason not to. And those voices, those gremlins are always speaking the
Mhm.
reasons not to do something. Um, and I mean, for me, it's often the finances of it.
Mhm.
People in our family and around our circles are, Tyler, like the finances don't add up. Don't do that crazy thing you're about to do.
Mhm.
Um, what would you say to those people who would say, I want to do this, but none of
Mhm.
the math adds up?
Right. The math ain't
The
mathin'.
math ain't mathing. How does Julie Briggs approach that when the math isn't?
Well, I I think it's easy to look at the situation and say maybe it was actually irresponsible, right?
Sure.
Like to make such a decision. I will say that once we got the kids, we did move upstairs into actual bedrooms.
Yes.
So I think it's holding space for a lot of different realities or options to be true. Like when people talk about, oh, I have this opportunity, and I don't know which one to do, and I really hope I pick the right one, and what's going to happen if I pick the wrong one? I think more often than not, it's just two opportunities. You just pick one, and whether it was the best choice or not, that's now your choice, and you run with that, and you get the support to navigate that. So, if we want a different life than we have and we don't have the power to change it, we do have the power to do other things. If I can't quit my job because of my car payment and I have this dream, this big dream to do something else, what are other little small things that I could be doing like with, myself? Am I reading books that are inspiring and changing my life? Am I working on building my savings account? Am I connecting with people who can help me feel passionate about my dreams and the things that I want to do, or commiserate with me that it's not time yet. So I think there are always things that we can do, but I know a lot of the stuff that you preach too is about the being.
Mhm.
And it's really important, I think, too, to just get comfortable being.
Yes.
Even if I'm not there yet, I can't do that thing yet. Can I learn how to just be here?
Mhm.
Because that will come. It will
Yes.
come when it comes, right?
And I would suggest, for what it's worth, that being often it does have action with it,
Yeah, absolutely.
right? And so it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, and so for you to say read a book, yes, that very much, man. I We could end the podcast on that wisdom. I
Absolutely.
appreciate that so much, in that, like, um, and so often I think when we do come back to the present moment and we do the next right thing, like Saint Anna of Arundel or Elsa or whoever says that, do the next right thing in
Hmm.
Frozen, the way often opens, right? You mentioned, you get the support that you need. Um, I think I've often found it. I have not always known how the door will unfold, but when I jump, then the doors unfold.
Yeah,
And that advice sounds cool and guru-y and whatever until you're faced with like a jump.
that's
Um,
scary.
would you be willing to share at all any of the stories where, like, you took a jump and there wasn't the provision yet, but then
Mhm.
it showed up? Because this isn't the only jump you guys took, although it's very inspiring. Um, how has that worked out? Do you have some evidence in your story of how you guys have taken a risk, made a jump, you didn't know how it was going to work out, and then holy moly, here we are. It's happening.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of things, most things that are not guaranteed, right? So pretty much everything we do all day long, it can feel like a risk,
Mhm.
right? And so I think, adopting the kids was a risk.
Mhm.
And every job change we've made was a risk. I I left a job because of internal corruption that I had no job to go to, and hoping my family was going to be okay financially while I found a different option, because my spirit could not be inside of that place,
Mhm.
was a risk.
Yes.
And it doesn't all like link together perfectly, but we have to get rid of ideas of perfection. Like,
Mhm.
I have to know that I'm going to wake up every day and I could be living in a really nice house with a wonderful family that totally gets along, with a fulfilling career and a savings account. Or I could wake up on a bench at the park,
Mhm.
estranged from everyone in my life. And neither of those scenarios would change my worth, my
Yes.
belonging, my value.
Mhm.
And I think if those things are intact, we can take all the risks we want, because I'm not tied to the result of the risk. My value is not tied to if this works out or not. So I think that gives us a lot of courage just in general to take risks, because it's like, well, I really want this, so I'm going to try it, and with all my might. And if it works out, this is going to be awesome. And if it doesn't work out, that's really going to suck. And I'm going to be down for a while. But eventually it'll be okay again, because it doesn't change anything about who I am. I skirted that question a little bit.
Oh, that's exact. Oh, that's so good. I mean, the core of it is when we know our identity, when we know that our worth is not tied to what Nowan would say, what I have, what I do, what other people say about me. When our
Mhm.
belovedness comes from a divine source,
Yeah.
we are free to do that, and it's not. Yeah, when nothing, the mantra that's the core of the book that I'm trying to get published someday. When I'm standing in my belovedness, I have nothing to fear, nothing to prove, nothing to lose, nothing to gain.
Mm.
Which is to
Yeah.
say, you can risk
I
it.
love it.
You can risk it when you know you're beloved, when you know you belong.
Right.
Before we move along, how have you known that value and worth? What has that process been like for you to be so anchored in that you can take those risks? What has Julie's journey of a more centered identity looked like?
Yeah. Well, I think I think it comes hard fought for everyone. I don't think anyone just naturally leans into and believes their own value and belovedness from the second they're born for their entire life.
Mhm.
I think maybe depending on your upbringing, it might feel natural for a while if you get really good, attentive, attached caregiving. But we go out into the world and we see that we're different from people and we get insecure, and we try to prove ourselves or we try to hide. I think for a lot of my life, I've been very focused on just being a people pleaser, making sure those around me are happy and have what they need, and not ruffling feathers. Easy breezy, everything's fine, no problems here. And as I've gotten older, so some of it is the deep work that I've done with tools like the Enneagram or with mindfulness, um, Qigong, like all of these kind of things have been very much like getting me centered and in my body and listening to, what's going on around me and what I'm feeling and what I'm needing. And then a big part of my own personal growth has been not becoming a jerk, but letting go of the I need to make sure everyone around me is happy and okay. And speaking my mind, using my voice, saying when I disagree or when something bothers me, because it's just not something that I've done most of my life. So I think some of it comes with the work, right? And some of it has come with being over 40.
Yes.
Because as one of my best friends says, my give a damn is straight busted.
I love that. Straight busted. No more give a
My
dams.
give a damn is straight busted. Yep.
Oh, that's really good. You have so much wisdom, and I want to try and fit as much of it as possible into this podcast. Um, you have 4 kids, so we're gonna take a left turn, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And when I look at them, I know a few of them better than others. They are so different, all 4 of them, in
Yes, they
so many
are.
ways. And I admire them all in so many different ways. Um, what does it look like to parent such a group of such diverse expression and personality and life experience? I mean, um, yeah, I would love, and man, I'm asking for my own self here, girl. I need help. But yeah, what is it? How does one parent such a group of rich beauty and complexity and diversity and uniqueness?
Yeah.
Yeah, what does that look like for you?
Well, sometimes I do it really well, and sometimes I completely screw it up. Um, and sometimes I'm exhausted, and sometimes I'm full of so much joy. But I think at the end of the day, what I have learned being a mom to these 4 awesome kids. So my kids right now are 11, 13, 17, and 21. All, like you said, very different personalities. I've got one introvert, 3 extroverts. I've got big feelers. I've got, you know, withdrawal kids and reactionary kids and, the whole gamut. Um, and I think what I've learned is I've done my own inner work. And then as my kids have gotten older, is the best thing that I can do as a parent is really let my kids thrive and feel celebrated for who they are. So like not comparing, well, your sister does this or your brother, is good at this or tries really hard at this. So like no comparing, no comparing. It's just a bad game to get into. But also I'm not I got this somewhere else, so this did not come from me. Um, People will talk about that verse that says if you raise up a child in the way that they should go, then when they are old, they will not depart from it. And I was raised to believe that meant if you raise your kid in a godly household as a Christian, then they will, if you do it well, then they will stay that as they grow up. And that's just not what that means.
Are you exactly the same as you were when you were a little girl, Julie?
Right, right. I'm not. But what I love, the real meaning of that
Mm.
is that if you raise up a child to know who they are and celebrate who they are, then
Wow.
when they grow up, they're not going to be wandering around trying to figure themselves out. They're going to go out into the world and know who they are. So if I have a kid who's a wildly creative free spirit, and so go girl, be a wildly creative free spirit. I don't need you to have a
Mhm.
day job. I don't need you to have your life all put together. I don't need you to, I mean, you got to pay your own bills, but like
Mhm.
trying to celebrate
Mhm.
that in her and not make her feel like
Mhm.
who she is not okay or not good enough. I have an outspoken child that I am not ever going to say, don't be bossy. I'm not ever going to say, you need to tamper yourself down so you don't intimidate other people. I'm going to say, hey, let's be wise with how we use our words.
Mhm.
I'm going to say, hey, I love that you have a big, strong, bold voice. Let's use it for good.
Mhm.
Right. And so just like, I have a kid who's very withdrawn and he'd be happy to just be in his bedroom 24 hours a day and come up occasionally for food. And that's hard sometimes. But at the end of the day, I think my job is I never want my kids to question whether or not I'm crazy about them.
Mhm.
And I think any parent can do that. We're all gonna fudge up many times. Every single human needs therapy. And we can be super well intentioned. We're going to hurt their feelings sometimes. They're going to hurt our feelings sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's like every child needs to know there's at least one adult in the world who's crazy about them.
Mhm.
So what a treat if we get to be that for our kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh, you and Alan are also very different. And you kind of mentioned that at the very beginning. I'd like to ask the same question, but as it pertains to your marriage.
Mhm.
I mean, both in the ways you guys express yourselves in the world, even in some of the ways and people you interact with is different. And, maybe even some worldviews and perspectives are even a little different. What
Mhm.
does that look like in your partnership to to live with a sense of obviously there's a lot of unity, but also some diversity in how you guys see the world and even just live. Again,
Mhm.
the way you are in the back of the room and he's in the front and all of
Mhm.
that, and yet you both are so powerful and both are just so amazing. What how is that made manifest in your partnership?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that's been the most important for us is that we get to remember and also remind each other that, we are the masters of our fate within our marriage. So if we have things that we're aligned on, great. If we have things that we're not aligned on, okay, how can we work around these things so that we still stay in unity, so that we still uphold each other with lots of love and respect,
Mhm.
um, and uh, not getting confused by any sort of narrative that might tell us if we're not perfectly aligned on every single thing, then we're doomed. Because I just don't receive that, and neither does he. So it's really about, um, you know, I want him, just like with my kids, like I want him to be living his best, most fulfilling life, whatever purpose and callings he feels on his life. I want to champion him in those things. And I want, just like I want him to champion me in the things that I'm doing. So whether I understand it or not, I know that I love him. And so I want what he is working on to flourish.
Mhm.
And whether he understands me or not, he wants me to flourish because we both, trust that the other is good and wants good.
Mhm.
And so I think we have to stay really intentional with communication, right? Because we humans tend to spiral. If we don't have information, we will fill in information and it will usually be negative information. So I think communicating a lot, which both Alan and I tend to be pretty positive people, which is great, except that it means you can avoid hard conversations because you just want to keep it fun.
Mhm.
But what we have learned in almost 18 years of marriage is that almost every time we've leaned in and had a really hard conversation, on the other side of it, we feel so much closer to each other. So even though the topic felt, big and scary and, ooh, I'm not sure that I want to say it or ask it, on the other side, it has certainly been a connection point of like, wow, I'm really glad you shared that with me, or that was hard, but I needed to hear that, and now I'm thinking through some things differently. Um, so so it's like lots of communication. It's choosing always to um, believe the best
Yeah.
about the other because we know who we are at the core. And then still participating in those things that we love to do together in the ways that we love to connect with people together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So in both of those answers, you talked about empowering the people in your life to be themselves. Like more than anything, it's I want to make sure my kids can be all the way them. I want to make
Mhm.
sure my husband can be all the way him.
Mhm.
And this works if I can be all the way me, which is a perfect segue here to talk about the area of expertise that you inhabit, which is to, at least for me as well, is the most profound tool and resource to help us understand us, which is the Enneagram. And for what it's worth, and I'm so excited to talk about this now. I was thinking about this morning. You were an Enneagram person before it was a fad, and now we're kind of in post fad Enneagram time, and you've stayed consistent with it forever. And so I love that. Like you're a real expert. Um, could you give us, for those who maybe are disenchanted on the Enneagram, maybe burned out on it from all the Instagrams, um, or for people who've never heard about it, give us a little intro, your little pitch onto what the Enneagram is, and kind of maybe a little bit of your resume in terms of how
Mhm.
you engage with it and teach it, and we'll dive into the Enneagram a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, I got into it just as a personal tool because I was curious. I want to say back in like 2016, 2017, um, as many people were getting into it. I just naturally assumed that everybody has heard of it, but
Mhm.
for those who haven't, I mean, it's really just a tool that helps people understand their personalities. But it is a very in-depth tool. There's like the coffee table, cocktail party conversation of like, ooh, what type are you? And oh, I bet that means this about you. And that's just, the surfacey, just enough to be dangerous, right? Of information to throw around and make people hate the tool.
Yep.
But what I really found is that I could go into deep, deep, in-depth study for years and years and still be a novice and still like be learning new things constantly and how to apply it to my life and how I see other people. I mean, essentially with the Enneagram, it's just everybody has a type, a number, 1 through 9, and that kind of helps us understand how we see the world. What is our focus of attention? Why is it different than other people's? Why some people tend to be more image conscious, or other people tend to care more about being in control, or having things all worked out in their head before they can make a next step. I just found it to be a really profound tool in understanding myself. Why am I the way I am? Why do I make the decisions that I make? And then honestly, in understanding other people, like so much makes sense when I can understand this lens of like, oh, we're not having the same experience here.
Mhm.
We're not seeing this from the same point of view. So really, I mean, and part of my temperament is that I'm not interested in shoving anything down anyone's throat or like making people excited about things that they're not excited about. So I've not been a hardcore like um influencer around the Enneagram of like everybody needs this. I think if you want it, you need it. And if you don't want it, then that's just fine. You can find a different tool that works better for you. Uh,
What makes it different, like versus, a Myers-Briggs or Strength Finders or whatever? Like, what makes the Enneagram what it is? What makes it special?
Yeah, I just think it is the depth of there's just more layers and more layers and more layers and more layers. And that something can know and identify you so well and so deeply, while also sprinkling on every single one of us is still our own unique human being, right? With our own experiences and pasts and all of that. I think I connected with it a lot because, well, segue, it was a lot of it was because I found the Enneagram Prison Project.
Mhm.
So I um I had had a dear friend who had been incarcerated and for a long time, and these were kind of like two separate things that were happening in my life. One was my friendship with this man who was incarcerated and released, and another was my work with the Enneagram. And so one day, I think back in 2019, I just had this random idea and I Googled like, does anyone teach the Enneagram in prison? And
And
lucky for
that
me,
just came up in your soul.
yeah,
That
I
was
just Googled it.
just a voice in your head.
Because I thought these two things, because I had always been interested in like getting into prison, not like as an incarcerated person, but doing something inside prison. But I didn't have any practical skills to get me in there. I was like, what am I going to do? Just be like, hey, I can come in and be nice to people. I'm good at that, you know, so that wasn't going to get me anywhere. I needed a skill or a tool. I'm not a nurse, I'm not a teacher, I'm not whatever. So So I just, yeah, randomly Googled it one day. Does anyone teach the Enneagram in prison? And I found an organization, a nonprofit called the Enneagram Prison Project. And I was like, great, because I don't want to invent the wheel. I want to, jump on this wagon that's already moving. And that kind of began, 5+ years of really intensive training and experiences. And what I really loved about their curriculum is that the way that we call it EPP, Enneagram Prison Project, the way that EPP teaches the Enneagram, the goal is to help people truly fall in love with each type. Like when we're being taught how to teach each type, we're being taught um, truth. Like you say the truth, you say the hard, and we teach in such a way that when it's all said and done, people go, "Oh, wow, what a great type."
Hmm.
That sounds like an awesome type. Or, "Oh, I'm so glad to be that type." Like teach in such a way that we remind people um, who they are, the gifts that they have, the essential qualities that they have that have never left them, that
Hmm.
we've piled a bunch of crap on top of throughout our lives, but you peel that back and that beauty is still there and it's always been there. So I was really drawn to that idea of helping people understand themselves better
Hmm.
through the lens of falling in love with themselves and with each other
Yeah.
different type. Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's when I did the training, like one of the things I found, because I've done three or four different trainings with the Enneagram, and one of the things that was so unique about EPP was, it's so easy for us to type ourselves based on the flaws.
Mhm.
And they
That's
were,
usually how people do it.
yeah, I mean, that's how I did it for sure. But like, they were very serious in the training I did to say, nope, we figure out who we are by what's right,
Yeah.
by the positive, by the beauty, by the goodness, by the flow. This is how we identify ourselves in this framework. And honestly, that was kind of the first time I had heard it. Not that people were aggressively teaching like find your flaws and that's who you are, but they were overtly serious and clear that the way forward is by finding what's right with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
that's really where like healing comes from.
mm,
I don't need to be reminded that
mm,
I'm a big piece of crap
mhm,
and I have to strive for the rest of my life to be worthy. Um, Healing comes from being reminded that I've always been worthy,
mhm,
right? That you've always been worthy, that there's never been anything wrong with you. Now that doesn't justify or excuse, bad behavior. We still need to be responsible, we still need to be accountable, but healing doesn't come from
mm.
that negative mindset. Healing comes from remembering that I've always been good.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
We were born beloved and still that way.
Still are. Yep.
Um, so what does your work in prison look like?
Oh, it's like my favorite thing. I look forward to it so much. I go to prison every Monday afternoon. It's a highlight of my week. It's taken a long time to get EPP here in Colorado just because we had to have trained. We're called guides, not teachers, because we're sitting in a circle doing the work together. So we are a guide. So I became an EPP in custody guide. Like I said, it took many years to get to that point. And then when we had to have guides in Colorado before we could start a program, and then once we had guides, which there are three in Colorado, then we had to get our foot in a facility. So it was really just trying to navigate how, we'll go in anywhere, jails, prisons, men's, women's. It's just who will let us come in and program. And EPP has an 8 module curriculum, which you could do in 8 weeks or spread it out, 10, 12, 20 weeks, whatever. Um, and so we were given a foothold at the Centennial Correctional Facility, which is in Canyon City. And so we started programming there, me and one other gal in January of this year. We did one full cohort that ended in March, and then we started another one in June that we're doing right now that'll go through August. So essentially what we're doing is this curriculum is really about teaching people self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-compassion. So the class is voluntary. We don't want it to be mandated because it's a lot of deep inner work. And so we want people to be there who want to be there. But also what you find in a lot of prisons and jails is people want to be in classes, right? They want to have something to do, but they also want to learn, they want to better themselves, they want to do something productive with their time. And so we had 19 men in our first cohort, and we have 23 men in our current cohort, with four of them being repeat attenders,
Mhm.
as we call them, from our last class. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's been really great. What my little elevator pitch, what I tell people when they ask what the class is about, is really like we start by laying the groundwork of understanding things like attachment and trauma and addiction. And then we overlay personality on top of those things because you put all those pieces together and it really starts to make some things click of like, oh, that makes sense of why I did that as a child, or why I didn't do that, or why this pattern helped me until it didn't, or it's just really helping people make sense of themselves. And with that comes that reminder of you are good and you are whole and you are beloved and you always have been. There's just been all of this other stuff piled on top that now we're taking a stick and we're poking at it and we're figuring it out. I don't need this anymore, and we can peel back some of those layers. But I absolutely love it. I mean, it's it's hard for me sometimes to navigate, like, how do I explain why I feel so much joy
Mhm.
when I go inside of a prison to do these
Yeah,
classes?
I love that.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
okay, so you said self-awareness, self-regulation. What was the third one?
And self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Mhm.
I so here's my big question. Because
Mhm.
I've been wrestling this with myself. Even, I put content on the internet and, I help people, and we're in an era of radical self-awareness in many ways,
Mhm.
right? Everybody's learning what a narcissist is, and everybody has a type and an Enneagram number, and we know so many things about ourselves, and there's plenty of gurus spouting stuff on the internet and making it so noisy. Um, Self-awareness in and of itself, though, doesn't just change us. Sometimes it almost is harmful. I know all of this stuff. I
Mhm.
know all this stuff about me. What do I do with it? Slash, like this idea of like, okay, transformation is a long road. Okay, I know all of this. Okay, this is why I tick the way I tick.
Mhm.
This is
Mhm.
why I dress the way I dress. This is why I process the way I process. All of the things you're talking about, this self-awareness and even having compassion, on these things we learn about ourselves. But how does that translate into actual change? In a world where we have so much information, and yet most people are more depressed, we're sadder, we're lonelier, addicted, etc.
Right.
We know about ourselves, but we're not changing. How do we take this great information that something like the Enneagram provides? You
Mhm.
provide it to these folks in prison. Where does the change actually happen, though? How does it actually happen?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. And you're right. Like there's a lot of like ego and narcissism that can come from just centering ourselves and leaving it there. But I think the real work comes from um, am I willing to see and be curious about all the things that are going on? Like, it has to start with self-awareness because if I'm not aware, then I can't do anything about it, right? If I'm not aware of my habits, my patterns, my tics, then I can't do anything about it,
Mhm.
right? So it's got to start with awareness. And adding this idea of self-regulation and self-compassion, I think is where the game changer is. So it has to start with awareness, but then when we go to self-regulation, so one thing that we talk about both in foster care and working with kids who've experienced trauma and in the prison world is we all have a brain, right? We all have the lower part of our brain, which is the instinctual, like fight, flight, freeze, just make a quick decision in the moment. And then we have the upper part of our brain, which is helping us make smart, good, logical, long-term decisions. And if I am incapable of regulating myself, then I don't have access to that smart part of my brain. I only have access to this reactive part of my brain. And so when we can take self-awareness and then on top of it, we can teach when I feel something coming up, can I pause? Can I take a breath? Can I just give my brain 3 seconds to access this part up here? um, then that gives me an opportunity to make different decisions. That gives me an opportunity to, and the more I do that, the better I get at that, right? So I'm starting with self-awareness. I'm learning how to regulate. Also, I can't regulate somebody else if I can't regulate myself,
Mhm.
right? And a lot of people who are in prison have not ever been given the skills to be able to self-regulate because no one was able to regulate them, right?
Yes.
You act up, you get hit, you get screamed at, which just sends me back into this fight, flight, or freeze mode even more.
Yep.
So teaching people these skills of like how to regulate their own emotions is hugely powerful. The world would be a different place if we all knew how to regulate our own emotions.
Mhm.
And so pairing these things of being aware of why I am the way I am through all these different means of like my attachment, my trauma, my whatever. And it's not about a woe is me story of like, well, I'm just like this because all these things happen, bad things happen to me, right? That's still a bunch of ego stuff right there. It's also okay to say, yeah, I think I did some things because of those things that happened to me. And I need to be accountable for those things. And I need to do my healing work so that I can change those things and break those patterns.
Mhm.
And that's why I say the healing, the self-compassion part is so important because um, people who are incarcerated, the vast majority of them are going to get out at some point. So if they're going to get out and come live in your neighborhood, you know, do you want them to be angry, disgruntled, undignified, caged animals, right? Who have been reminded every day of their lives for the last 20 years that they are a worthless menace to society because then they were going to come out and they're going to act like what they've been told they are? Or do you want people to come out with, I've done a lot of deep introspective work. I've done a lot of like, I can love others because I can love myself. And it's not that I love myself because I'm better than others. It's I can love others because I know that I am also loved. I was in class last week reminding people of the rule of one, which is the circle part of the Enneagram. And our boy that we love so much, Father Gregory Boyle from
Mhm.
Homeboy,
Yes,
he
yes.
says
Mhm.
that we have forgotten that we belong to each other.
Mhm.
And this idea of this circle, this law of one, is that reminder of going back to the fact that it doesn't matter which number you are on this circle, we all belong to each other. And we have to remember that, which means we have to include ourselves and we have to include everybody else. So the real work is like, yes, learning about myself, but I'm also learning to see other people through a light of like, oh, that's why they get like this sometimes. That makes a lot more sense. We're just peeling back the layers and we're getting curious. Um, and I think when it's genuine, when we're genuinely doing the work, it doesn't result in more ego and more me. It results in um, self-compassion and understanding, but also a lot of compassion and understanding for other people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The inner work always spills outward
Yeah.
when we do it for reals.
Hmm.
As we start to end wrap up here, I'd be curious if you could offer some practical wisdom on regulation. I'm curious as you say that, like when you talk about self regulate, is that how different is that depending on what type you are versus like some universal sort of perspectives on how one can regulate themselves when they find themselves in fight or flight or freeze? What would you say to someone who feels wildly dysregulated in a chaotic world? And if someone was coming to you and saying, "Listen, I can't take a whole class. I'm not in prison. I don't get the privilege of learning from Julie." How does one regulate in such a way that's so helpful?
Yeah, I used to be confused like before I learned about a lot of this just mindfulness stuff of like what are people talking about when they say just breathe? Like that's dumb. That's dumb advice. Of course, we all breathe all day long. Like what do you even mean? And then I started doing some mindfulness stuff, and you can get an app that walks you through a breathing exercise. You can go to a class, and it's hard at first, right? Because I felt bored. I felt, what is the point of this? I felt my mind wandering to all these different places and then trying to come back. So I think it certainly is, regulation is certainly a practice, right? You don't just decide to be good at regulating and then you are. It is a practice. But again, with awareness, we can do it. So, what I like to remind people of is we are not naturally uh, able to regulate ourselves. We're not. That's just look at the world. Look at all the adults fumbling around, completely reactionary all the time. This is not a natural skill that people just have. We learn to regulate ourselves because of co-regulation, because somebody else regulated us, right? So maybe that is a parent with a baby, right? Maybe it is just two humans together. Like we need somebody else to regulate with us before we can learn how to regulate ourselves. And regulate is really just a fancy word for feeling calm, right? Because when I'm calm, I can access this smart part of my brain. When I am not calm, I don't even have access to it. So when people are like yelling at a kid who's all dysregulated and the kid is yelling and then they throw something and they're like, "What were you thinking?" They literally weren't because they did not have access to the smart part of their brain and they don't unless or until they're calm. So one of my favorite things ever that favorite tools ever that is from Dr. Bruce Perry. He's a child psychologist and he talks about the three R's, which are regulate, relate, and reason. So he talks about this with kids who've experienced trauma, but I'm like, you can literally use this on any human. You can use this on your boss or your spouse or your child, or literally anybody. Is that thinking about those levels of the brain? So first, if I'm in an escalated situation with somebody, if my first responsibility is to get me calm, right? So can I, again, it's when I can pause and take a couple breaths that I start to get access to this part of my brain. So first I have to be calm and then I have to calm down the other person. So that is not like a dysregulated person cannot calm down another dysregulated person. So I can't yell at somebody to calm down, right? That works never. So first I have to be calm and then I have to help you calm down. And I do that by lowering my voice and by speaking more slowly. Like I'm probably going to put you to sleep right now, but I'm literally just, don't you feel calmer now, Tyler?
I do.
I'm literally just bringing it down. So when I'm calm and now you're calm, now what we get to do is relate.
Mhm.
So um, this is connection. So now we're both calm. Now we need to feel connected, right? Let's go on a walk around the block, buddy. How are you doing? Like, do you want to grab an ice cream cone? How about we calm down and just like play a little game of Uno or something, right?
Yep.
So first we're calm and then we're connected because we first need to know that regardless of anything else, I'm a human worthy of connection. And then and only then can we go to the reason. Now I have access to this part of my brain. Talk to me about what was going on. Like what caused
Mm.
you to throw that block at your sister's head?
Mhm.
I'd love to understand that a little bit more,
Yeah.
right? And we invert that all the time. But this is like, we yell at people, we escalate the situation, we ask for logic and reason when we literally can't do that. And so we have adults roaming around our world causing all sorts of havoc because those things were never done for them. So therefore, they never knew how to do it for anybody else or for themselves.
Yep.
So even just having these nuggets of wisdom, it's like so much power because if we can do this 2 out of 10 times, that's going to be a huge success. And next year, we're going to do it 4 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
And it's just a game changer, I think.
Yeah. That's so helpful. Like I'm already replaying all my interactions with my son right now. Like, which order did I do this in? Oh my gosh.
Well, if I could rewind 10 years, I would have done some huge things very
Oh
differently.
my
But,
gosh.
it was what it was. Once we know better, we can do better.
Um, does this work on our own self? Like I imagine the person watching, TikTok and just seeing floods in the South, war in the
Yeah.
Middle East,
Yeah.
uh, police brutality in their neighborhood, their parents getting divorced, they're 4 days sober, like whatever somebody's carrying.
Yeah.
How does that own regulation work to one's self? Here I am filled with anxiety. Is it just downloading an app and breathing? What's the three R's for one's self, I suppose I'm asking, or
Right.
what would you say to that?
That's the self-compassion part of all of it, right? The self-awareness, self-regulation, and self-compassion is really those two ideas of can I be calm and can I be curious? So if I'm getting all spun up, which I have been the last week about all those things that you just mentioned, and
Sorry,
I
my
think
bad.
many of us are, is yeah, I mean, it's simple to say, oh, just go on a walk around the block and, take a few breaths. But really, can I identify some things and admit them out loud to myself or internally to myself
Mhm.
of like, I'm really feeling this way right now, or I'm really worried about this, or I'm really angry about this, and kind of holding it with some compassion, almost being that empty chair person to yourself of being like, yeah, you know what? That is really hard, or this is really scary. Like, just give myself some validation, like, ooh, you probably came in a little hot, talking to your son the other day because of other stuff you were dealing with. I understand. I get it. This is really rough. Like, what do we need to do to repair? And how do we really take care of ourselves? Not a bubble bath and a walk around the block. Like, those things are great, but how do we really take care of ourselves? So again, having that compassion, but we can do it for ourselves with practice, being calm and being curious. Why did I just flip that guy off at the light? Like, what is happening inside of me right now? Peel back the layers, be curious. Oh, this is going on. Oh, this person said this, right? I think that becomes really impactful because then we can have more just grace on ourselves as well.
It's so good. Julie, I'm just overwhelmed at the wisdom and just the offerings you gave today. I'm just so grateful and so thankful. If you had, I mean, obviously there's a few messages that are core to you, but if you had a message for the world, kind of your lifelong message, to share out there into the cosmos, what would you say is Julie's just core message to send out to the people?
Well, I think the reason why, we're so drawn to Father Boyle is because
Mm,
he says it, right? He says everyone is unshakably good and everyone belongs.
mm,
Um, and I agree that those are the messages that change everything. I think every human needs to feel like they are unconditionally loved, worthy, and whole exactly as they are right in this moment without need for change. And that doesn't mean we don't change. That just means that we flourish the most when we're loved exactly as we are without that prerequisite of change. Um, so that's what I want to try to do when I'm present enough to do it.
awesome. Awesome, Julie. Well, thank you so much. It's been an honor to host you. I can't wait to have you on again. And in the
Yes,
meantime, keep loving people the way you do. And I'm so grateful for you.
absolutely. Same for
Awesome.
you and your lovely family and lovely wife, and really excited for all the things that you guys are working on, and big fan as well. I'll be sending people your way.
Yeah. Thanks, Julie.
Mhm.